Okay, is everyone ready for part 2 of solving inequalities? This is difficulty number 2, where we have to work with inequalities that have two sides, technically three, and we're supposed to call these guys compound inequalities. Compound because there's more than two parts. There's actually a third part. So here's an example. We've already seen this in the Google Meet, but here we got this three sides. There's two inequality symbols, and your first goal is your main goal is to get the p by itself. So first you get the 6p or negative 6p by itself by getting rid of the negative 20. So we're going to do that by adding 20 to all three of the sections. Equal opportunity, same thing for all of them, and you simplify. We still don't know what p is, or at least we haven't isolated the p yet. We're going to do this by dividing the coefficient. The coefficient is negative 6, that's multiplied by p. We need to divide. And so we divide by negative 6. And at this point, we're going to simplify to get the p all by itself. Now be careful, when you divide by a negative, you have to reverse the inequalities. So let's fly those guys in there. You can do that your own way, but just writing it bold on top will work fine. And now you're going to have p greater than negative 5 and p less than 3. We're looking for the values between negative 5 and 3. And the easiest way to show this is on a graph where we put those two numbers, negative 5 and 3, and show that we don't include the endpoints, but all the values in between are included. Next question. Negative 11 less than 2x plus 7 less than 9. Now, we don't have a negative on the 2x, so the coefficient is going to be a little bit easier to work with because it's positive. So first goal, get rid of the plus 7 by subtracting. All three of them get subtracted by 7. Watch out for integer rules, right? And now I need to divide all three terms by 2. Now the question that came up was, what would happen if one of these values wound up being a 0, if the first or the last wound up a 0? And that would be fine, but you better not get a 0 in the middle. That's no good. So at this point I need the x by itself by dividing by 2. And at the end you have negative 9 less than x less than 1. Notice, by the way, the negative 9 has to be less than the 1. And in all of these questions, the two inequality symbols will both be pointing to the same direction. In this case, they're both less thans. In other questions, they might both be greater than or equal to. And now the graph is going to be negative 9 to 1. Do not include either endpoint. And you can put 0 in there, but you don't necessarily have to. Okay, looks like I made a problem here with the animation, so I'll have to just sort of muddle through this one. You'll see it's a hint of the final answer. I'm going to subtract 3 from all parts of the inequality to get the 6x by itself. Divide all three of these parts by 6 to isolate the x. And it's going to be x is greater than negative 2, x is less than or equal to 6. Now, to put that in the number line, we pick the two numbers, negative 2 and 6, and there is your answer, pops up magically between negative 2 and 6, and including the number 6. So hopefully that's a good enough introduction to this. The last little bits is doing the interval notation for the inequalities, which would be the endpoints. So in this particular case, I'll just write that on the screen here. The notation would be you go x is going to be an element from negative 2 up until 6, and you don't include the negative 2, but you do include the 6. So you're probably going to see one or two questions that involve those kind of intervals. Thanks, and hopefully that is all perfectly clear for you. Now, how do I shut off this thing?